Jupiter's moon Europa has been keeping a secret for 400 years. And 48 hours ago, the James Webb Space Telescope looked directly through the frost and found something that shouldn't be there. Since 1610, we have looked at this world and seen a desert of ice, a smooth, frozen shell, miles thick, hiding a dark ocean we can only imagine. No life, no light, no warmth. For decades, we were told Europa was a pristine laboratory, a frozen time capsule. But somewhere in the infrared data coming back from 400 million miles away, a signature started bleeding through the sensors. A specific spike in carbon dioxide, concentrated in a place called Tara Regio, coming from a place where by the rules of planetary science we understood, the surface should have been chemically dead. NASA did not expect to find it so easily. They have been planning a multi-billion-dollar mission for years to find what Webb just saw in a single afternoon. And on April 24th of this year, the latest data dump confirmed the impossible. This is what James Webb actually found, why the official habitability models are being quietly revised, and what the question becomes now that we know the ocean underneath is actively leaking onto the surface. To understand why this matters, you have to understand how strange Europa actually is. Most people call it a moon, but that is wrong. It is a world, an aquatic planet encased in a shell of rock-hard ice. It gets almost no heat from the sun. What it does get is us. It gets our probes, our telescopes, and our constant curiosity. The ice itself is a solid wall between us and the largest ocean in the solar system, a natural shield about 15 to 25 kilometers thick. The moment a photon of light hits it, the reflection is so bright it blinds most sensors. It is the smoothest place any human being has ever observed, and smooth, as James Webb just learned, is not the same as stable. The Galileo mission was our dress rehearsal. In the 90s, NASA sent a probe to circle Jupiter to do everything a deep space scout would do. It found evidence of the ocean. It saw the cracks in the ice, but it couldn't tell us if that ocean could support life. It was supposed to be the definitive chapter of a historic discovery. It was not. When Webb pointed its golden mirror at Europa and filtered for carbon, the onboard spectrometers kept running. Tara Regio is a chaos terrain, a place where the ice is broken apart and refrozen into jagged, messy blocks. And at some point during that observation, a chemical signature started coming through the downlink, not sulfur from neighboring Io, not the ambient space dust that astronomers had been trained to expect. A concentrated patch of CO2. One of the scientists describes it in the briefing as, well, they call it internally sourced. Internally sourced. You can hear the weight in that phrase. You can hear them trying to reconcile what they are seeing. At one point, the data showed that this carbon wasn't brought there by meteorites. It came from below. No one expected it to be so fresh. They say they did not expect to see it on the surface at all. Not in the salt deposits, not in the frozen plains. The findings were eventually published in 2023, and the follow-up data hit the servers just this week, but almost nobody noticed the implication. It was only when the Europa Clipper team started adjusting their flight paths that the story reached the public for the first time. When it finally got out, the scientists were asked the obvious question: why the sudden shift? Why change the narrative on Europa's ocean after so long? The answer tells you everything about what looking for life in 2026 actually means. They were afraid of being wrong. NASA had a standing model that Europa's ocean was locked away, sealed by an impenetrable barrier of ice that would take a nuclear-powered drill to breach. A decade of mission planning could be upended if the ice was actually thin or permeable. Just one mission earlier, the Juno probe had suggested the oxygen levels on Europa were lower than we thought, and the program had paid for that data with a more pessimistic outlook on life. So when Webb found carbon, the literal building block of us, in a place where the ice is actively churning, they made a calculation. They didn't call it life. They called it geological activity. They kept the excitement off the record. They finished the analysis. But here's where the official story starts to crack. Europa was not the only moon that showed this signature. Enceladus has it too. When we looked at Saturn's moon, we saw plumes. We saw the ocean spraying into space. The difference was that for Europa, we were told the ice was a vault. But the Webb data, almost word for word, matches the messy chemistry of an open ocean. Had we not been warned about the radiation, it would have looked like a habitat. That single realization is the quiet heart of the whole story. The most famous habitable moon in our system is doing exactly what the plumes of Enceladus do, just without the giant geysers. And the only thing keeping the scientific community calm is being told in advance that chaos terrain is just a geological quirk. Other telescopes reported similar findings. The Hubble, however, did not. And Hubble is the mission that turns this whole question into a real puzzle because it provides the one piece of evidence that actually tests the engineering explanation. Hubble looked at Europa in 2012. It saw what looked like water vapor, but it didn't have the eyes to see the carbon, no second instrument, no infrared vision to see the heat of the cracks. The signature that Webb found never appeared on the one telescope that didn't have the hardware to find it. That is the cleanest piece of evidence the active ocean theory has ever had. It is also the reason most biologists who have worked on Europa's models consider the mystery effectively solved. If you have carbon, and you have heat, and you have liquid water all mixing in a chaos zone, you don't just have a moon. You have a petri dish. Add the psychological weight of being 400 million miles away, and the experience scales from a minor data artifact to something that feels biological. So, what was it? The official NASA explanation once the story was forced into the open was exactly this. The carbon is coming from the ocean, but it doesn't mean there is life. It just means the ocean is chemically interesting. It is a clean theory. It is almost certainly correct. It also is not the whole story. Start with the physics we already know. Europa sits inside Jupiter's massive radiation belt, a long plume of charged particles that the gas giant drags across its moons. When a moon moves through that plasma, it gets blasted. That radiation should destroy organic molecules on the surface. They shouldn't last. But Webb saw them anyway. That means the carbon is being replenished right now. As you watch this, there's also the moon itself. The Galileo seismometers and magnetometer data picked up events we now call ice quakes. Recent analysis of the old archives has identified thousands of these events. Some were powerful enough to shift entire sheets of ice. The largest could open cracks that reach all the way down to the liquid water. While engineers thought they had the answer, the modern sensors on Webb were about to put that theory to the ultimate test. And then there are the answers that are less comfortable. The chaos terrain has only been mapped in detail recently. Orbiters have found thermal anomalies there, patches of ice that are slightly warmer than they should be. Whether any of it could support a biosphere is not known. Nobody has run the experiment. Europa is the experiment. If you want to go one step further, you can ask the question that the astrobiologists themselves seem to be asking in private. What if the music of Europa isn't coming from the ice at all? Not in the sense that anyone serious thinks there are whales swimming under the frost, but in the sense that there are chemical processes at work we haven't named yet. Imagine being the Europa Clipper probe arriving in 2030. Jupiter filling your window on one side, the sun a tiny, weak pinprick on the other. Below, on the smooth surface, jagged blocks of ice are shifting and grinding. And somewhere in that silence, a signature starts rising: carbon, salts, organics, steady enough to notice, strange enough that you have to wonder if we've been looking at the wrong world all along. Whether we find life or just chemistry is something only the next decade will tell. There is a reason this story has traveled. It is not because anyone thinks the moon is haunted. It is because it touches something honest about what exploration feels like. We imagine our probes as perfect machines, but the real experience is closer to what we are living through now. You look at a world. Your equipment finds something you cannot explain. You have to decide whether to trust the old textbooks or to trust the new data that is trying to delete them. The far side of the solar system is not the darkest place we've looked. It is the most patient. And patience has a way of surfacing things that we aren't ready for. Webb came back carrying the most sophisticated data ever recorded from Europa. That data is now being pulled apart. Whatever is out there behind the ice, it has been there the whole time. We just stopped looking for about 40 years. 48 hours ago, we started again. And if the pattern holds, whatever we actually find in that dark ocean, we will not hear all of it today. We may have to wait until the Clipper finally arrives to decide it is safe to say. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.